Hi everyone. Today we're going to finish up our HTML practice by taking a look at what we had worked on last time with the intro.html file. So let's pick up where we left off there. Okay. All right. So what did we have last time? So not much, right? We had some basic tags set up, the HTML tag. We have the head tag. In the head, we had a title. In the body, it may have been something a little different to this in class. I'm just trying to go off of memory here. But we had a couple of headings, H1, H3, and an H5. Remember, you can go all the way down to H6. That'll make the text the smallest. H1 makes it the biggest. And then we had a couple of divs with some IDs, right? And so this, again, might be a different order from what you had in the notes, but it's the same idea, okay? So we had two divs, one with ID div output and one with ID div image, and the inner HTML for the ID div image one, right, we put in a image tag, right? And so we made a subfolder called images, and in that folder we saved a file called chi.png, and we also customized the width of this image so that it became a lot smaller. Okay, so this is what we have so far. So if we go back, right, we can open this in the browser. Right, this is what we should have so far. Mine is very zoomed in right now, so the standard size, oof, right, that's very tiny, right, but zoomed in, it looks good. Okay, so let's go back to the document, and that took us all the way through step 4, so let's pick up from there. Step 5, insert a text box for the user to enter their name using an input tag. So let's go back to the body. Okay, and we can do this anywhere. I'll do this between my headings and my div tags. So right here, right, I will go with an input tag. And with an input tag, we have to specify a type. And the type for this one is going to be a text. This is how we create a text box. Okay, and now there are a couple of attributes in the document, placeholder and ID. So let's go ahead and type those in. And then we'll talk about what the new one there, placeholder, does. So placeholder, and again, I love VS Code. As I'm typing, I'm just going to hit enter after typing PLA. I'll say capital N name, ID equals, I think we wrote ID text box on the document. Okay, yep, ID text box is our ID. Okay, let's go ahead and save this and let's see how this looks and what we want to change. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Okay, I'm going to refresh and there's my text box. Okay, right? So text box right there, and right away you should be able to see what the placeholder attribute does, right? Is it puts something in the text box, but unlike a value attribute, which we'll talk about a little later, right? Once I start typing something into this, right, it could be anything, right? My name could be student, right? It automatically erases the placeholder. Okay, so you may have seen this if you're buying stuff online, right? The text box will say address, and once you start typing your home address, right, the word address disappears from the box. That's because it had a placeholder attribute. Okay, and we've talked about the ID tag already, right? This is so that we can identify this specifically once we start using it in the JavaScript. Okay, so let's keep going. Okay, number 6, insert a button that says submit. So this is a type equals button, and the value, we'll talk about that for the button here in a moment. Okay, I'm going to put this before the image. So notice how I'm putting all of this before the image here. Okay, so after my input tag closes there, right, I will go input type equals button, and I will give it a value that says submit, and I will close that input right there. Okay, so let's go see what that looks like. Okay, now notice that my text box and my button are right next to each other. Okay, if you like that, that's fine. If you don't like that, remember that enters in the document, right? So I'm saying enters, but really I should be saying lines, right? Lines in this file don't do anything. If you want to create gaps, you have to use things like the header tag, which will automatically put blank lines before and after, or you can use what is called a line break, right? So between these two, I will put a BR tag, and this will go ahead and move the button to a new line. If I go back and refresh, now the button is below it. Okay, so if you like that better, that's something you can do. If you want to create a blank, you can put another. You can put as many BR tags as you want. Hitting enter here a whole bunch of times, all of this blank space does absolutely nothing in terms of what gets displayed on the screen. Okay, so let's go ahead and save 2 BRs. Right, and now it's spaced out a little bit. Okay, so let's go back to the document, right? And so we are good there. So here's everything I wanted on my page. So not much here, right? Couple of headers, couple of divs, an image, text box, and a button. Okay, so that was all HTML stuff, right? Because this is all just structure. This is how my web page is going to be set up. Now I want to make things happen. When I click this button, right, nothing is happening, right? When I type my name into this text box, right, I can't do anything with this, right? I can highlight this, right? You know, there's standard stuff you can do, Control, right, C to copy and all that stuff, but that's built into the computer you're using. That has nothing to do with my web page, okay? So task 2, add functionality. So add script tags inside the head and below the title. So let's go back, okay? Again, everything in the body tags is what shows up on my web page. The head is where the thinking occurs. Below the title, so I'm gonna hit a couple enters here, I'm gonna create a script tag, okay? And this is where I'm going to put all of my functions. If you go back and look at any of our files from our robot mazes, right, the function robot instructions was always in a script tag, okay? So this is where we are going to create a function, right? So number 2 says create a new function that will output text on the screen. So just like when we did multi-move and roundabout and move 5, when we make a function, try to name it based on its purpose. So the purpose here is to output text on the screen, right? So why don't I name this function? So let me write function. How about something like show text? Open, close parentheses, curly brackets, hit enter. Okay. We've talked about the capitalization technique that's called lower camel case. So the first word is all lowercase. Every word after that starts with an uppercase letter. So the T in text there. Okay. This tells me exactly what the purpose of this function is going to be. It's going to be to show text on the screen. Okay. 3 says add an on-click event handler for the button. Timeout, pause, let's talk. Okay, here's what I want you to do. Open a new Google tab, and I want you to search for something called W3 Schools. Okay, we have a link to this on our Schoology page as well, right? But you can find it easily from just a search. Okay. Go ahead and click on the first result that shows up. It should take you to w3schools.com, okay, which is this page here. Might look a little different, right? I don't know how often they update this, okay? But this is an excellent resource for learning little tutorials, right, for learning different languages, including the first 3, our 3, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and second semester we'll throw Python in there, okay? So this is a really, really good resource. So let's go back to the document for a second. Add an on-click event handler for the button, okay? Something like this you can type into Google, right, and see what shows up, okay? But I really like W3 Schools, right, as a resource for looking up stuff, specifically JavaScript, HTML, CSS things, right, which is our big 3. So I'm going to search on W3 Schools for the word event. Let's talk about what events are, okay? So I type in event. And before you click the little search, the first thing that shows up is HTML event reference. Go ahead and click on that. Okay. It says HTML event attributes. Okay, so if we read this, it says what? Global event attributes. HTML has the ability to let events trigger actions in a browser, like starting a JavaScript when a user clicks on an element. Okay, below are the global events that can be added to HTML elements to define event actions. That's a lot of formal text. Okay, events, to summarize, are things that can happen on your web page. Let's go back to our web page. What are things I can do on this page? I can move my mouse, right? Let's say I want something to happen when I move my mouse on top of the word tutorial, right? Or if I click in this text box, or if I click this button, or if I double click the word funsies, right? If I right click, right, on this web page in my browser, right? Those are all examples of events. There are lots and lots of events that can happen, right? For example, with your keyboard, right? You can press down on a key, right? You can press a key and just, it's a little bit different than pressing it down. We don't really have to get into it right now, right? But when you let go of a key on your keyboard, something can happen, okay? Again, with a mouse, you can click, you can double click, right? When I press the left click down, right? That is an on mouse down versus an on mouse up. When I scroll the wheel, on wheel, okay? So these are all examples of events. So if we look, and you know, again, there's so many different categories of events, right? What do you want to happen if you copy something, okay? We are looking for the on-click event handler, okay? So what we want to do, here's our goal. When I click this button, just like that, I want some JavaScript code to execute, okay? So if I go back to this W3 Schools page, right, under the mouse events, the first one is called onClick. So I'm going to click on that. It'll take me to a page, right, that shows me an example, okay, right? And you'll notice here in the example, right, the first part of this just looks like HTML code, right? You see the less than, you see the name of the HTML tag, and now these events are just attributes that go in between the, somewhere in the opening tags, in between the less than and the greater than, okay? So let's try this ourselves. All right, let's go back to our document. Okay, I have a function called showText. All right, what I want is when I click on this button, so somewhere in here, right, I'm going to do it after the value, but before that greater than symbol, I'm going to write on. Now I like to capitalize that lower camel case, so I'll go capital C, on click equals, love when VS Code puts the quotation marks for me, on click equals double quotes, and this is where I'm going to write the name of my function from my JavaScript, pardon me, which is called showText open close parentheses. So when I click this button, the showText function is now going to run. Okay, showText open close parentheses, right? So on click is the event, okay? On click is the event. When I click on this button, this function runs, right? Now, when I go back to my page though and I refresh, I click submit, nothing's happening. Mantra, you lied to us, okay? What's happening here is that I don't have any code to execute in the function, right? But the event is still registering that, okay, this function is running. We just haven't said yet what to do when that function runs, okay? So again, there's a ton of events. You can learn a lot more about this. There's a lot of these. We're going to do a couple of events together as well, okay? Okay, number 4 on the handout says, in your new function, concatenate and display a sentence using the value of text box in the first div tag, okay? Lot going on there, okay? First up is a key vocab word for this class, which is concatenate, okay? This is where we put together strings of text, all right? So we talked about different data types in chapter 1. Strings are one of them, Okay, so what we're going to do, right, is first, whatever the user types into this text box is going to be its value. Let's go ahead and save that to a variable. So I'm going to go ahead and create a variable. So inside of my function, I don't like where my cursor is over here, so I'm going to hit tab. There we go. And I'm going to make a function called a variable, excuse me, called let input name is going to be the name of my variable. And I'm going to grab the value from this text box. Okay, and the way I grab the value is I first have to say, I have to tell the browser what to do, right? I'm telling Google Chrome, first I need you to look into this document. And I know that seems silly, right? But you can actually pull stuff from all over the internet in your JavaScript. You can say, hey, go to ESPN.com and grab this heading, right? But I don't want to grab something from ESPN.com. I want something from this document. In this document, you're going to search by the ID. So I'm going to run a function in this document called get element, notice the capital E, by, notice the capital B, ID, notice the capital I, parentheses, quote, and now in this quote right here, I'm going to specify the ID for my text box, right, exactly as it is spelled and capitalized. So if you want to copy this, feel free to copy, and in the quotes here, go ahead and paste. Okay, and specifically now, once it's identified this HTML object, whatever I type into this box, again, gets the attribute of its value. Okay, so close parentheses, dot value, semicolon. Okay, now remember, when we deal with variables, it's right to left. So we're going to look in this document, we're going to look for a specific ID. That ID is ID text box. Once we find that HTML element, we're going to get its value. Its value will get saved to this variable called input name. Okay, so let's save that for now. Okay, and now I'm going to make another variable. Put a little gap here. Okay, I'm going to use this variable in a sentence. Okay, right? But I'm going to start off and I'm going to call it output string. Okay, and I'm going to start off by making output string equal to nothing. Okay, so I did a couple of things here. All right, the first thing I did was I made a variable called output string, right? So the browser knows, hey computer, go ahead and make me a box, call it output string. What's in that box? It is double quotation marks. This is called the empty string. There is nothing in here right now. But what I'm telling the computer is this variable output string is going to, you see what happens when I put my mouse over it, right? It is going to hold one type of data, which is string. Okay, not a number, right? Not a float, not a Boolean, just strings. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and write a little sentence that uses input name. Okay, so let's do it like this, right? So I'm going to take output string and I'm going to say plus equals. Okay, plus equals, and now let me write the string hello. Let's see. Since we're going to use the name, I won't end the sentence there. I'll say hello, comma, space, in the quote, plus, and now I will use input name, plus, quote, period, space. And after that second set of quotation marks, I'll put a semicolon. Okay. Let's just stop here for a sec. Okay, let's put this on the screen and then we'll kind of talk about like what we just did here and how this works. Okay, so I'm going to go down, right? I'm going to put this variable output string into the inner HTML of this div. Okay, so when you're making a variable or you're using it, right, you want to think about, am I changing the variable or am I using the variable, right? In this first line, I'm making input name equal to something. So that's going to change what input name was, right? But now I'm going to use output string. I'm not changing it. So what side of the equal sign should it go on, left or right? It should go on the right side. On the left side, I'm going to specify that I want it to go to this div's inner HTML. So again, the way I specify one specific HTML object is by doing document dot get element by ID. And now, folks, you're going to notice, let me do that again, right? When I start typing, right, GET, do you see this in this list? The second one is get element by ID. So I can just arrow down and hit enter. You can also click with your mouse, but I don't like taking my hand off the keyboard if I don't have to. Okay, parentheses, quote, and now I did not copy my ID. So let me go ahead and just write it in, ID div output, right? So it is ID div output, check your spelling, check your capitalization, and I am going to change its inner HTML to be the variable output string. Now when I type out, the first thing that comes up is output string. So I'm just going to hit enter and then semicolon. Okay. Let me show you what this looks like on the web page, and then again we'll kind of go back in and break down exactly what just happened here, right? Because it'll make more sense once you see it. Okay, so let's go to our page. Okay, refresh your page, of course. Go ahead and type in your name. My name is Student, and I'm going to click submit, right? And what shows up on the screen? It is hello, comma, space. Here is the value from this text box, followed by the period in the string. Okay, so here's what we just did. Okay, there's three different parts to this, right? We took the value of the text box, we saved it to input name, right? And then this right here, and now to help us out with this so that we remember it next time, before I write let output string, I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to go up to that line. I'm going to make a comment so that when I look back on this file, I'll know exactly what I did. So I'm going to go // right? And I'm going to say, right, here we concatenated an output string. I'll just say an output variable. How about that? Okay. Concatenate means to put strings together, right? So here I have the empty string. Now you might look at that and go, hey, Mantra, you just call that the empty string. There's nothing there. Well, technically that nothing is something. I know that sounds weird, but remember, double quotes tells the browser, hey, this is a string type variable, okay? Plus equals will add on to whatever you had before. And in this case, we're going to add on to it hello, right? And now the rest of this we could have done in multiple lines, but I did it in one line of code. Now I'm concatenating to that the string that is held in the variable input name, and I'm concatenating onto that the string that holds the period and a space. All of that is saved in output string, and then the third part, before document here, I'm going to hit enter, go back up and add another comment. Here we are displaying our output variable. There's two parts to this, right? You have to create your output variable. Here's everything I want to show on the web page, right? And then there's actually showing it or displaying it on the web page. Those are two separate tasks in coding, okay? And that's what we did here. All right. Okay, so that is all task, 4, right? And then it says add functionality to change the inner HTML of the div tag containing the image. Do we want to do that? No, I'm going to skip 5. We'll do that as a part of the enhancement, okay? That's task 2. Doing these 4 steps here right, is going to get you pretty far in this, kind of like the next week and a half, I would say, if you're comfortable with that. Okay. Okay, let's look at the enhancement. Download a new image from Google. Use an on mouse over tag to change the image that's currently there. Now you're looking at this and you're like, what is on mouse over? It is another event, right? And so in their mouse events, there is on mouse over. Now, let me show you real quick how to use W3 Schools a little bit, okay? A lot of people look at these try it yourselves. These are really nice tutorials, but they misinterpret the point of this, right? The point of this is not to show you specifically what the JavaScript here is doing. It's just to show you how the on mouse over event works. We put the on mouse over in the image tag to call this function. Now again, in this specific tutorial, the function is big image. Okay, and so when I put my mouse over the smiley face, big image runs. Okay, the goal of our task is not to make the image bigger, it is to change the image. Okay, so you have to, now you can pause the video for this, right? Go find your image, right? Save it in your images folder. I already have one image, right, that I'm going to change mine to. Okay. So I'm going to go down now to my image. So this goes in the image tag. Okay, the event is an attribute for the image tag. So I'm going to go after the width. Right here, I'm going to put on mouse over equals quote. And now you can go ahead and make a function here. Okay, so I'm going to make my function called change image. Open close parentheses. Okay, remember, you can call things whatever you want. I try to be specific and concise. Change image. Okay, so let's go to my script tag. After the curly bracket here, I'm going to hit enter a couple times, and I'm going to make a function called change image. Okay. Now, right away though, you should be thinking about something that we've talked about that I have not done yet, right? Which is that my image tag does not have an ID. If I'm going to change this specific image tag, right, I need to give it an ID. Okay, so somewhere in this image tag, it doesn't matter where, right? You could put it before the source, between the source, and these things don't matter. Okay, I'm going to put it after the width. I'm going to go ID equals quote. I will call it ID img chi. Okay, and I'll put a space there, right? Because this is the ID for my image that's showing the Chicago Bears logo. Okay, this specific image, right? If I want to change the picture that shows up, I need to update the src, the source. Okay, so that's exactly what I'm going to do in my change image function. All right, so let's go back up. Okay, so I'm going to say document dot get element, and again, it's right here, it pops up. If I get rid of the E, right, you'll see it's the second one there. The first one is called something get animation, something, something, right? We're not animating anything, right? We're going to get the element. So if I type the E, I can just hit enter. Okay, and now what's the ID I just created for my image tag? It is ID img chi. I'm going to update its source to equal, right? Now, I've already added this to my images folder, right? So images / now here you should write the name of your image. Okay, my image has a different name. When you save it from Google, right, it has a specific name. You can of course customize the name. Okay, my file is a little treat for our Packers fans in the crowd. Okay, so let's see how this works. All right, I refresh, on mouse over, right, and it changes the source for the image. Okay, now if I look back at the W3 Schools example, right here, right, when I put my mouse on it, The function runs, the function does what it does, but when I take my mouse off, right, it reverts the image back to the original. That's because my image tag here also has a separate event called onMouseOut, right? OnMouseOut happens when you take your mouse off of that HTML element, and it's running a different function. So we're going to do the same thing with ours, okay? So let's go back, okay? And again, in my same image tag, I have an onMouseOver. I'm going to do it before here, right? let me put a space there as well, okay? OnMouseOut equals quote, and now call the function whatever you want. I'm going to call mine returnImage, okay? And notice how it's still in like this orangey brownish kind of color, right? That's because right now this function doesn't exist, right? But change image is in yellow. That's because it does exist in my script tag. So VS Code is happy about that. So let's go ahead now and let's make that function return image. Okay, so I'm going to go function return image, open close parentheses, open curly bracket. And now, folks, copy and paste is my friend, right? Because it's the same element with the same ID. I'm updating the same attribute, which is the source, right? It's in the same images folder, right? I'm going to copy all of that and paste, okay? And now, what am I putting after the slash? Well, if I'm changing it back, it's chi.png, close quote, semicolon, okay? And now, if I go back and take a look, oops, sorry, not on this page, okay, switches to the Rogers image, switches back to the Bears. OnMouseOver, OnMouseOut, over, out, over, out, right? Let's run the change image function. Let's run the return image function, okay? So I don't need to give it a new ID because I'm talking about the same HTML element. There's only one image tag in my body, right? So I don't need a new ID, right? But what I do need are two new functions, return image and change image. One is for the onMouseOver, one is for the onMouseOut, right? One changes the image to this other file in my images folder. The other one changes it back to the original, okay? All right, so that was enhancement 1, okay? Enhancement 2 says change the font type, size, and color of the headers. You will need to add style tags in the head tag. And so this is where CSS comes in. And CSS has its own formatting, which is different than the tags of HTML. It is different than JavaScript, okay, right? But I'll do this between the title and the script tag. We'll go style, okay. Let's create a style tag, all right. And now let's just do some basic styling for the whole web page, okay. So first, let's write body, right? No greater than less than, because this is CSS. I go curly bracket and hit enter. Now, notice the underline. Excuse me. If I put my mouse over that, what does it say? Do not use empty rule sets, CSS. CSS doesn't like it when you write like you're going to style something, but then you don't. So that's why that's underlined, okay? So let's go ahead and fix that. First, I'm going to give this web page a background color, okay? So when I start typing in back, right, this is all the CSS options I have that have the word back in them, right? First, let's go background color, and it gives you a bunch of options to pick from, right? You can scroll through these. You can type in some basic colors in a string as well. Okay, I'll go green. Okay, and below that, I'll just go color, colon, and again, it gives you some basic options. Okay, let's go with how about a dark goldenrod? Okay. Semicolon. Now CSS gets mad if you don't have semicolons, so I am going to put one here. Okay, let's see what this looks like. Actually, should we go blue and orange, right? Since we're doing a Bears theme, right? Should we go blue? right? Yeah, let's see how this looks. Okay, I'm not a great styler, so this is not the prettiest website, but that's not my goal. Okay, right? And so now my whole page has a different background color, and all of the text is of a different color. Okay, but the direction said to actually, sorry, let's stay here. The direction said to style specifically the headers. Okay, so let's go back, and after the closing bracket for the body, I'll go H1. So you'll notice here what I'm doing is any HTML element I want styled a specific way, right? I will write the name of that HTML element. Okay, so let's go ahead and give the H1 some custom styling, right? First, I'll go at font, and let's go font family. This is where you can pick fonts, and now VS Code will give you a bunch of options, right? And really what you're doing here is, if a web browser doesn't have Times New Roman, it'll look for something called Times, which is another font. If it doesn't have that one, then it goes to a family of fonts called serif, right? If you're into calligraphy, there's serif, there's sans serif, there's a whole bunch, right? We're not going to get into calligraphy though. Save that for the art teachers, okay? And you can just say, hey, give me any basic one that's in any of these categories, right? But there's also these lists, okay? So, I'll pick Arial, Helvetica. Let's pick that one, okay? So I'm going to save it, and then I go back and refresh, right? And now my H1 tag looks different. Okay, right? Because it has a different font than the base font, which by the way is Times New Roman. Okay, right? For the H1 tag specifically. Now, if that did not show up for you when you typed in font family, you can just write the name of a basic font. So I like Impact, for example. If you've made some memes in your life, right? That one, whoops, sorry. Let's try that again. There we go. Okay, now it goes to Impact font. All right, so if that list didn't pop up for whatever reason, it's not a big deal. Now, let's say I want multiple elements to have this specific styling. I don't have to redo this, right? I can just say H1 comma H3, for example, right? And now if I go back and refresh, now the H3 tag also has the same styling. So as much styling as you want, you can put in these curly brackets. And this is, again, where W3 Schools is your friend. They have a whole section on CSS, right? You can scroll on the left side, CSS fonts. You can learn all about that stuff, right? There's so many options. And I think I already mentioned this to you guys. You're going to learn so much CSS stuff on your own just because it's fun, right? You're going to learn way more than I know, and I'm totally fine with that. Okay, 3 says change the background color of the web page when you click on the text in the H1 tag. So when I click on the H1 tag, so when I click this tag, right, I want to change the background of the web page. So in the H1 tag, I have to give it an on click. And now what's my function going to be called? I'm going to call it change background. Okay. And now some of you are going to be like, hey, do we have to give it an ID? Well, think about what we are doing with this function. The goal here is to change the background color of the web page, not the H1 tag itself, right? So when I did stuff for my image, right, on mouse over, on mouse out, I was specifically making functions that were going to alter the source on this image tag. So it needed an ID so that I could identify this specific image tag. Well, if I'm going to make a function that changes the background of the whole web page, I don't need to identify this specific H1 tag. Okay, so one more function change background, open close parentheses, right? And now if we want to change the CSS on the whole web page, we go document.body.style. And now there's a little trickiness to this. Okay, so notice here, right, I scroll down in this list and there's an option called background color. See how it's spelled here. Background, no space, capital C color. If I look back though in my CSS, it is background dash all lowercase color. Okay, so the CSS coding and the JavaScript coding look a little bit different, and this is something I'm going to expect some of you to struggle with a little bit in the beginning. That's okay, of course, because we're going to get better at it, but it's just something to keep an eye out for. Okay, so background, I want background color, and I'll make it equal to, I don't know what's going to look good with this. We'll say red. There's no way this is going to look good though. Okay, so again, in this document, for the body, it's styling. We specifically want to change the background color. Okay, so let's go back, refresh. When I click on this heading, ooh, that's rough to read. Sorry about that. That changes the background. Okay, so we're going to call it right there, and I will see you next time.